Hello everyone, this is Gene and I'm back with another video. No face cam today because, well, I'm just not camera ready. But I wanted to cover this. I want to thank Lyle, I think that's his name, Lyle, online, who I follow, because he posted a screenshot of this. Now, I'm going to try to be as respectful as I can to Mr. Gage here, right? Apparently he makes video games. I don't follow the creator side of gaming as much anymore, so I can't say I know who he is. But he's good. But he's a blue check, so he's at least Twitter important. So he talks about here having to stop games that promote gun culture. So I just wanted to read over this and then sort of give my opinion uh, and explain why. Well, he's wrong in my opinion. All right, so as you can see, this is only from 2 days ago, so it's very recent. So, Mr. Gage says, okay, time to do my every once in a while break of my rule about not being negative on Twitter. I think it's time to stop being okay with games that promote gun culture. I too enjoy Rainbow Six, Call of Duty, etc. But why do I know the difference between an F2 and an M4? Video game media don't turn people violent, but they do promote gun culture, and gun culture is killing us. First question I have for Mr. Gage, respectfully. What is gun culture? In particular, what is American gun culture? Tell me this, because for all the talk of gun culture, I've yet to see anybody give a clear, succinct, distinct definition of what gun culture is. The existence of something is not necessarily uh, the culture of it. Like, for example, people argue that because rape happens, we live in a rape culture. No, we don't. Because rape is not promoted. Rape is not socially acceptable. So, just because something exists or bad things happen involving something that exists, like a gun, right? Violent gun crime, violent gun violence exists, right? So, tell me, sir, what exactly is American gun culture? Because the US is basically, to put it simply, a bunch of city states onto themselves. Gun culture, if such a thing exists in the modern day, to say a New Yorker, like myself, is very different than gun culture to a Texan, is very different than someone in Chicago, is very different to a mafia hitman, is very different to a gangbanger, is very different to a police officer, is very different to a military man or woman. All of these involve guns, yet all of them have a gun culture, or I guess you could say the existence of guns affects their livelihoods in various different ways, right? How I view a gun or how a New Yorker views a gun is going to be very different than all of these other groups. And even amongst us New Yorkers, how we view guns individually is going to be different. Some view guns as a collector's hobby. Some view guns as a hunting tool. Some view guns as a weapon of war. Some view guns as self-defense. Some view guns as, um, instruments of unspeakable evil. And they're all right. Because guns can and have been used in this way. So explain to me, sir, give me a clear, distinct definition of what gun culture, and in particular what American gun culture is, because last I can see, there's no set definition. The definition is very relative, very subjective. It's more or less what you think it is. Now, I cannot comment on gun culture because I did not grow up in gun culture. I was not raised with people around me having guns or as a part of my life, especially my young life or my family, right? Now, I grew up understanding the concept of gun violence because I've lived all my life in a very dangerous, big liberal city where street crime is just a fact of life. So you grow up with that. You learn to not go out late at night. You learn to stick to well lit streets. You learn to avoid odd looking people. You start hearing stuff, you duck, right? And you try to get out of there as soon as possible. That's what I learned about how to deal with gun violence. But that's not the same thing as gun culture. I didn't grow up in that. I didn't grow up, the daughter of a farmer or whatever, where, or a hunter, where this is a constant part of your life, right? So tell me, sir, since you know so much, Mr. Twitter famous, tell me what American gun culture is, because I don't know. It wasn't something I was raised with. And please explain to me how games like Rainbow Six, Call of Duty, etc., promote gun culture by simply having guns. Why do I know the difference between an F2 and an M4? I assume because you play those games. Same way I know the difference between a SOCOM pistol, a PSG-1 rifle, a chaff grenade, a frag grenade, a flashbang, and various other weapons because I played a lot of Metal Gear Solid growing up. Just because a game features something does not mean it's necessarily promoting it. Mortal Kombat features literal murder. You can kill your opponent at the end of the match. That does not mean it is promoting or trying to program people who played the game into becoming martial arts murderers. For all of my playing Mortal Kombat, I never took up martial arts. Not for a lack of trying, but I never took up martial arts. More importantly, I never developed a desire to engage in death matches, put my life on the line, and then if I win, take my opponent out permanently. I never looked at it and thought, a real life version of this would be so awesome. No. I keep it in the realm of a video game because that's what it is. It's a silly, over the top video game. That's what these in the end are. They are entertainment. They are video games. Can you make entertainment with a message? Sure. Metal Gear Solid is very anti-war. But in the end, it is entertainment. Just because you are exposed to something, or the concept, or the idea, or you are made, or you are informed that something exists, does not mean that it is promoting that thing. That's like saying that movies like Saving Private Ryan are promoting, war, or promoting joining the military because it's a story about, trying to save a soldier who's the last, if I remember correctly, the last son of his family, right? Just because something is featured in a work does not necessarily mean it is promoted in a work. I'll give you another video game example. Metal Gear Solid. Snake can smoke. It's established that Snake is a smoker. You can literally pick the cigarettes and have him smoke. There's even a benefit to it in that the cigarette smoke can help him see laser tripwires. But it also eats at your health. And if you talk to the characters on the codec, they will tell Snake that smoking is bad for him. So just because you can technically have Snake smoke does not mean that the game is promoting smoking or promoting a brand of cigarettes. So please, sir, explain this tweet to me, because I am not quite understanding your message here. So let's continue. For me, I think the made-up guns are okay, but I definitely agree that's a line for each of us to draw. My concern for the past few years is how Call of Duty promotes cool gun culture, and cool gun culture props up the NRA and enthusiasts that keep guns legal and easy to access. First of all, most guns are not easy to access. Guns are very expensive, from hundreds to thousands of dollars, and you have to go through background checks and various other things. A lot of people who commit crimes like this are able to access guns because oftentimes somebody else that they know in their life has a gun. For example, the Sandy Hook shooter, right? I'm not going to say his name, but the Sandy Hook shooter. right? He didn't own the guns he used. Those were his mother's guns. His mother's legally purchased guns. She was not the threat. She never had any intention to use those guns in the way that they were used. Her son, who had that intention, right, took her guns. He took her guns, turned them against her. She was his first victim. And this is the problem that people don't want to acknowledge or can't solve. Right? Are there some instances where somebody buys weaponry? Yeah, sure. Even purchases it legally. But the access issue is more in these disturbed individuals who have these homicidal desires, knowing people, often family, who have guns, and they take the guns, and then they go and they use them in this very hurtful, destructive manner, right? So you can do all the background checks and psych evals all you want, but guess what? Most of the time, they're not the ones purchasing the gun. They're the ones stealing it. So there's your sort of access point that has to be addressed. I'm not saying you don't try to improve the current system of background checks or other things, sure. But that can only screen out people who actually try to make a purchase, right? If the mentally disturbed teenager, right, is not the person who purchased them, but they get the gun, what are you gonna do? The background check can't account for somebody who didn't try to purchase it, right? So there's that. And now I don't play Call of Duty, so I cannot speak to how it promotes cool gun culture. Because again, what the hell is gun culture in America? Now, as for the NRA and enthusiasts, you know what keeps the NRA around? Politicians. On both sides. On all sides. The same politicians who call for the destruction of the NRA every time that there's a tragedy are the same ones who clandestinely give money to them or otherwise keep them around. Because again, all of this debate about what should have been done or what could have been done or whether we need more gun control or less is ultimately a distraction. Distractions that politicians use to promote not public interest, not public health, not public safety, not school safety, not student safety, not mental health, but promote themselves. Understand that. Call of Duty has nothing to do with the NRA. Politics have everything to do with the NRA. And then he says here, I personally think made up guns are fine. For me, the issue is with games that promote gun culture. World War II guns seem not quite as bad in this respect. Oh, really? So what about all the people who collect World War II memorabilia, including guns, or do intense study of the war and of the weapons that were used in that war? Not just the things like the guns, but the grenades, the various tanks, the anti-air carriers, right? What about those who say study the military history of World War II or any conflict, right? Any conflict. Are they now promoting cool gun culture? Are they promoting classic gun culture? Right? How do you address this? Because to me you are attacking the very media that you work in, that you work for, because it happens to feature something that can be used in real life in a very destructive manner. Let's say that we had a culture similar to a lot of East Asians, right? The Chinese and the Japanese, right? Where swords, right? Swords and various bladed weapons are a huge part of like the cultural history, right? Okay, so let's say you have somebody who takes a sword or any sort of bladed weapon and murders people with them. Do you suddenly say we need to stop making works that promote sword culture, that promote samurai culture, right? The Japanese in particular have been defined culturally, both within their own country and by the outside world, by their strict cultural embrace and adherence to the code of Bushido. Even though the samurai no longer exists in the modern world, that mindset, that warrior mindset, culturally is ingrained even in the modern day. So if somebody takes a sword and hacks people up in Japan, does the prime minister should the prime minister come out and go, we need to get rid of every game that we have ever made that features swords. We need to this is how we address it, right? Is it the problem of a culture that has embraced or been influenced by um, a certain weapon, certain type of weapon, right? Is it the media, or is it that we have very dangerous, mentally ill individuals who have homicidal desires, who keep falling through the cracks because the signs are seen, but the signs are never acted upon until it is too late? Tell me what the real issue is here. Because here's the thing, for all this talk about gun culture and media and video games and all this other stuff, this is a nation of 330 some million people, officially. The majority of us don't go around trying to kill each other. If we did, there would literally be blood in the streets right now. By and far, we are not a murderous people. We don't live in a murder culture. We live in perhaps a violent one, I'll give you that. We've certainly embraced violence as entertainment, as we see in the various entertainment that we take in. But that doesn't mean that collectively we have translated that to now violent action on a regular basis. Sadly, there will always be violent people. There will always be crime. There will always be tragedy. But to try to claim that media is influencing this or creating this by promoting, in this case, guns, by simply featuring guns, right? If that's the case, then every piece of media needs to stop making works about criminals, serial killers, the mafia. They use guns. Why aren't you attacking that? You think TV, which has been a part of American culture a lot longer than video games have, right? You think that constantly seeing shows like The Untouchables or uh, uh, Law and Order or this show or that show doesn't influence people? Wouldn't TV, with its history, have more of a cultural impact and more cultural influence than video games have? Wouldn't they be more guilty of promoting gun culture over modern American history than video games, which a lot of which came of us to from Japan? So we were actually consuming media of a culture that was not our own. What about all that? How do you explain that? Tell me, Mr. Gage, how do you explain that? Because I'm not quite understanding your position here. I'm trying to understand, but I just don't get it. And I'm not trying to be mean, but I'm gonna challenge, these assertions. And that's for the point about fantasy guns or World War II guns. Guess what? The fantasy guns in games like Halo or Mass Effect or whatever are based on real world existing guns or guns that did exist in the past. You're not escaping the real world influence that you claim is promoting this. You're not escaping the real world gun culture that you claim leads to these tragedies. Now look, if you personally no longer want to play games like Rainbow Six or Call of Duty or Doom or whatever else, that's fine. That's fine. You have you have every right to not play those games anymore if you personally feel guilty about it. If you're having a crisis of conscience or a crisis of faith and you no longer feel good about playing those games, that's fine. You don't have to. You don't have to at all. But stop trying to blame video games for something they didn't cause as you claim you're not blaming video games for something they didn't cause, right? And I don't know where it is, but I remember seeing another tweet from him talking about games should not promote realistic military culture. And it's like, sir, unless you served, what the hell do you know about realistic military culture? What do you know about it? Did you serve? Do you know someone who served? Because there was this game, called 6 Days in Fallujah, which many of the gaming press were trying to actually get canceled, and that game actually did touch upon and was influenced by the actual accounts of people, both civilian and soldier, who were in Fallujah. Yet, sites like Kotaku and Polygon tried to get that game canceled, claiming that it was going to lead to the increased death of brown people and that it would convince gamers to hate Middle Eastern people. To the point where even prominent voice actors like Jennifer Hale, the woman who voices female Commander Shepard in that game called Mass Effect, where you play as a space marine, signed a petition on change.org to get the game canceled. So please tell me, Mr. Gage, what is supposed to be done here? Because it sounds like the very thing you were calling for or asking for was actively getting canceled, or at least people were attempting to get it canceled before it even got off the ground. In short, stop blaming video games for something they don't do. You sound no better and no different than the same people who, when GTA Vice City came out, claimed the game was racist because it had instructions in the game like kill the Cubans, kill the Haitians, conveniently leaving out the fact that this was referencing Haitian and Cuban gang members. And that in the game, you can work for a Haitian gang leader, Auntie Paulette, and a Cuban gang leader, Umberto. Right? It was referencing in-game stuff, and the media took it and tried to twist it around as being racist, where it wasn't. Stop playing this game. Stop trying to basically self-flagellate? Is that the term? Right? Stop literally beating yourself up and beating up the medium you work in because the media wants to blame you, or they want to blame games. They've been blaming games since 1992, and they'll continue to do so long as games are something that is enjoyed by the youth. They blamed films back in the 50s like Rebel Without a Cause for teen violence, when that whole movie was a criticism of teen violence and the societal issues that lead to teen violence. People literally missed the point because they were looking for something to blame. You would do a lot better to make a work that has a message while being entertaining than sitting here on Twitter talking about something that, with all due respect, sir, I don't think you quite understand. That none of us, sadly, can really understand, because you cannot understand the warped minds of a killer. It's impossible. The mind of a murderer will never make sense to a person who is not a murderer. And trying to blame everything on the outside for what that man did, or for what the Sandy Hook shooter, the Columbine shooters, and every other shooter, the Virginia Tech shooter and all those did, trying to blame the outside world for what they did simply absolves them of guilt. Hold them accountable. Hold them responsible. But stop blaming yourself. And stop blaming what you do for a living, or what you play, or what you enjoy. You didn't do it. Rainbow Six didn't do it. Call of Duty didn't do it. There's no shame in knowing the difference between an M4 and an F2. You say that video games and media don't turn people violent, yet you're talking about the promotion of gun culture, which is being blamed for making somebody violent. Make up your mind, sir. Anyway, that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day, night, wherever you are. Bye.